Some films arrive like thunder, loud, celebrated, impossible to ignore. And then there are films like It's a Wonderful Life, quiet as snowfall, slipping into the world almost unnoticed, only to become more powerful with each passing year. This is the rare story that didn't define the era it came from, but instead shaped the hearts of audiences who discovered it decades later. When you revisit Bedford Falls, it's not just nostalgia you feel, it's recognition. The kind that grows deeper the more life you've lived. The burdens, the dreams, the disappointments. The moments where you wonder whether your choices mattered. Somehow, this movie understands all of it. At the center is George Bailey, a man whose ordinary life hides extraordinary impact. A man trapped between responsibility and desire. A man pushed so far down by circumstances that he begins to believe the world will be better without him in it. And yet, beneath that despair lives a message so profoundly human it still echoes with impossible clarity nearly 80 years later. Every life touches countless others, and every person matters more than they know. What makes this film so enduring isn't just the sentiment. The snow looks real because a special effects team invented a brand new technique to create it. The tears on George Bailey's face are real because James Stewart was carrying the trauma of war inside of him. Bedford Falls feels real because a small city was built from scratch to make it real. This film isn't about magic in theory. It's magic in execution. And perhaps the most miraculous thing of all, that It's a Wonderful Life, now a cornerstone of Christmas tradition, almost disappeared completely. This is the story of how forgotten film became immortal. Like all great legends, the origins of It's a Wonderful Life begin in the unlikeliest of places. Not a film studio, not a producer's office, but inside a Christmas card. In 1939, writer Philip Van Doren Stern finished a short story titled The Greatest Gift. It told the tale of a man contemplating who is shown an alternate reality where he never existed. No publisher wanted it, not one. So in 1943, Stern took matters into his own hands. He printed the story as a 21-page pamphlet and mailed it out with his Christmas cards. That small gesture became the spark that would eventually ignite a Christmas classic. One of those cards found its way to Hollywood. Actor Cary Grant read it, loved it, and passed it to RKO Pictures. The studio bought the rights and began developing it as a potential grant project, commissioning scripts, holding meetings, imagining what the story could become. But nothing clicked. Draft after draft stalled. The project fell dormant. Then came Frank Capra. Capra had just returned from World War II. Like many veterans, he was searching for something meaningful, a story that would reconnect him with the idealism of America he believed in. When he read The Greatest Gift, he saw more than a story. He saw his next film. Capra bought the rights from RKO, brought in James Stewart, another war veteran still trembling from the emotional weight of combat, and set out to build the greatest cinematic meditation on purpose and humanity he would ever make. But first, he had to convince Stewart, who wasn't even sure he wanted to act anymore. When Frank Capra pitched the story to James Stewart, he rambled nervously. You're going to jump off a bridge, then an angel shows up. He shows you a world where you were never born. He stopped mid-sentence. This doesn't sound very good, does it? Stewart paused, took a breath, and simply said, when do we start? Even with the director and star aligned, the early production was chaotic. Capra hired Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, an acclaimed husband and wife writing team, to refine the script. But weeks after tension and arguments, they walked away. Capra quietly brought in others, Dorothy Parker, Joe Swirling, Michael Wilson, to polish scenes without credit. What emerged was a screenplay that balanced darkness and light with delicate precision. Meanwhile, James Stewart struggled. It was his first film since serving as a bomber pilot in World War II. His confidence was shattered. His nerves were raw. Early in the shoot, he admitted to Capra and co-star Lionel Barrymore that he wasn't sure he could act anymore. Barrymore, a Hollywood legend, pulled Stewart aside and delivered the pep talk of a lifetime. Just because you stopped acting doesn't mean you stopped being an actor. In April 1946, cameras finally rolled in California. But Bedford Falls didn't exist, so Capra built it. 3 acres of land, 75 buildings, storefronts, sidewalks, trees, and traffic lights. An entire town. One of the largest sets ever constructed. Capra wasn't just making a movie. He was building a world where ordinary people mattered, where small kindness rippled outward, where community defined identity. Inside that world, George Bailey began to come to life. From the moment Stewart stepped onto that Bedford Falls set, Capra could see the transformation. The hesitancy faded. The posture straightened. The stammer found its purpose. George Bailey wasn't a character James Stewart was performing. He was a man he understood. Yet, even as the emotional breakthrough was happening, the physical production pushed everyone to their limits. Bedford Falls was supposed to look cold, snowy, and wintry. But filming took place in a brutal California heatwave. Temperatures hit 90 degrees. Actors sweated beneath wool coats. Jimmy Stewart's breathless run down the snowy street shouting Merry Christmas was filmed in July. And that snow, it wasn't cornflakes like most films used. Capra hated the crunching sound. So RKO special effects wizard Russell Shearman invented a brand new kind of cinematic snow made from fire extinguishing foam mixed with water, sugar, and soap flakes. Quiet, realistic, groundbreaking. A technique that earned a Technical Academy Award. Meanwhile, scenes that look effortless on screen took enormous precision behind it. The Buffalo Gals dance scene, where the gym floor opens up and everyone falls into a pool, was shot at Beverly Hills High School, which actually had a retractable floor. Capra took advantage, capturing one of the most joyful sequences ever put on film. But the most important moment came not from special effects or elaborate sets, but from Stewart himself. In Martini's bar, George Bailey sits trembling, praying desperately. In that moment, Stewart wasn't acting. He was overwhelmed by real emotion. Capra saw it, stayed quiet, and let the camera roll. The rawness you see, the tears, the quiver, the defeat, came straight from a man still healing from war. It became the emotional soul of the film. It's a Wonderful Life premiered on December 20th, 1946. Expectations were high. Capra was beloved. Stewart was respected. The studio believed it had a warm, uplifting hit. But the world wasn't quite ready. World War II had just ended a year earlier. Audiences wanted escapism. Comedies, romances, technicolor fantasies. What audiences got instead was a film about depression, sacrifice, and the crushing weight of responsibility. A film that asked them to sit with their regrets. A film that showed them a world where kindness doesn't always get rewarded. Reviews were mixed. The New York Times called it sentimental to a fault. Other critics dismissed it as too earnest, too soft, too idealistic. The box office was worse. Against a $3 million budget, the film underperformed badly. RKO lost money. Liberty Films, Capra's new company, never recovered. For a time, the movie was viewed as a disappointment. And yet, award shows recognized its brilliance. The film earned 5 Academy Award nominations: Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, and more. Capra won a Golden Globe. The newly developed Quiet Snow earned an industry award. But awards couldn't change the reality. Audiences simply didn't connect. By 1947, It's a Wonderful Life faded away, shelved, forgotten, overshadowed by other films of the time. The movie seemed destined to be a footnote in Hollywood history. No one knew that something extraordinary would happen nearly 30 years later, an accident of copyright law that would resurrect the film, revive its message, and turn this overlooked gem into one of the most beloved holiday movies in American history. For decades, It's a Wonderful Life quietly slept in the vaults, admired by film buffs, occasionally revisited by critics, but mostly unseen by the general public. Then came 1974. In one of the greatest mistakes, or miracles, in copyright history, the film's copyright lapsed. No one renewed it. Suddenly, It's a Wonderful Life became public domain. Television stations, eager for inexpensive holiday programming, jumped at the chance to air it. At first once, then twice, then all December long. Some stations ran it continuously. Across America, families flipping through channels stumbled onto a black and white film they had never seen. Yet somehow, it felt instantly familiar. People cried, people smiled, and people connected. Not just to the story, but to one another. By the late 1970s, It's a Wonderful Life had become a yearly tradition. By the 1980s, it was a phenomenon. NBC eventually secured exclusive rights. Newspapers wrote articles about the film's resurgence. University film classes analyzed its structure. Psychologists studied its impact. And viewers, year after year, gathered to watch George Bailey stand on that snowy bridge and discover that his life, like theirs, had meaning. Capra, now an elderly man, watched all of this with awe. "I thought it was the greatest film anybody ever made," he once said. Time had proven him right. What the world rejected in 1946, it embraced with open arms in the 1970s and 80s. The film's renaissance was so complete that its influence spread across pop culture. Sitcoms, dramas, holiday specials, Parodies, references, homages. The alternate universe where you were never born premise became a storyline template used everywhere. A forgotten movie had now become immortal. While the film's revival filled living rooms with joy, its deeper emotional resonance reached even further. For many people, It's a Wonderful Life was more than entertainment. It was a lifeline. In the late 1980s, a Florida judge famously ordered a defendant to watch the movie as part of his rehabilitation. Mental health counselors began referencing it in therapy sessions. The film had become a guidebook for rediscovering purpose. It wasn't the nostalgia that made it powerful. It was the honesty. It's a Wonderful Life is often described as heartwarming, but at its core, it is a story about pain, financial ruin, lost dreams, crushing expectations, lonely despair. George Bailey doesn't just break down, he shatters. He represents the part of all of us that wonders whether our sacrifices have been worth it. But the film also gives us Mary, Clarence, and Uncle Billy, the people who remind us that none of us walk alone. It reminds us that no one sees their impact clearly, that the ordinary moments, the favors, the kindness, the difficult choices ripple outward in ways we never realize. For some viewers, the message feels like closure. For others, like hope. For many, like a hand reaching out in the dark. And that sometimes, when you feel like your life hasn't amounted to much, all it takes is one person, or one film, to show you the truth. Today, It's a Wonderful Life isn't just a movie. It's a ritual, a chorus, a gathering, a bridge between generations. Grandparents share it with their grandchildren. Parents share it with their children. And each year, it means something new, depending on where we are in our own lives. The American Film Institute ranked it the #1 most inspiring film ever made. The Library of Congress declared it culturally essential. NBC keeps its Christmas Eve broadcast alive. And in December, It's a Wonderful Life screens in local theaters nationwide, drawing crowds who already know every line, but want to feel them again. Its fingerprints are everywhere across pop culture. Gremlins plays it on TV in the background. Bruce Almighty quotes it. Sitcoms from Cheers to Friends borrow its structure. Even the Muppets and Sesame Street acknowledge it. And yet, despite all the references, the parodies, the airings, the cultural saturation, the movie somehow loses none of its sincerity, none of its authenticity. It's still grounded in the most universal human emotions: love, fear, regret, gratitude, and the longing to matter. Every December, the world returns to Bedford Falls, to that snowy street, to that living room filled with neighbors, to that ringing bell that signals Clarence's wings. And we return for one reason, because this story makes us feel something real. At the end of It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey doesn't become rich. He doesn't escape responsibility. He doesn't get the life he dreamed of. Instead, he receives something far more powerful: perspective. He sees, clearly and painfully, what most of us never get to see: the impact of his own existence, the invisible threads connecting him to others, the truth that his life, imperfect as it was, mattered immensely. That's what pulls us back to this film year after year. Not nostalgia alone, not the Christmas setting, not even the romance or the comedy. It's the humanity. The idea that the smallest kindness can transform a life, and the smallest cruelty can break one. The idea that community is strength, and the idea that hope is found in the faces of the people who love us. Frank Capra never set out to make a holiday movie. He set out to make a human movie. And somehow, through a twist of fate, a lost copyright, a late-night TV broadcast, and millions of viewers who saw themselves in George Bailey, that little human story became a cornerstone of Christmas. And maybe that's the real magic. Because It's a Wonderful Life doesn't tell us that life is perfect or easy or fair. It tells us something better, that every one of us matters, that even when we can't see our own worth, others can, and that sometimes the greatest gift isn't a miracle. It's the simple reminder that we're not alone. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. And every time this movie plays, someone out there remembers that their life is wonderful.